Hello, Florence, my lovely. We're ready for chapter 7. It's called Collective Terms. I'm not sure if that's a cupcake. Might be. Or some kind of tart, maybe. If you have ever been very small, which, unless you begin life as a fully formed adult of average height, you must have been, and if you have ever experienced your smallness in a crowded place, then you will know the unpleasant feeling of being invisible to a lot of people with very sharp elbows. Shenanigan was experiencing that unpleasantness for the first time. It was like being underwater, all the talk passing above her head, like waves breaking on the surface of the sea, while below she was knocked back and forth. Clothes wafted around her in invisible currents. It was hard to breathe. Shenanigan struck out in the general direction of the buffet table to seek higher ground. You scoundrel! You rogue! She broke through a gap between relatives just in time to see an extraordinary figure in a frock coat hurl a glove at another man's feet. Do not laugh at me, monsieur, the man in the frock coat cried. This is an insult to my honor. Pistols! Pistols by moonlight! He tossed his long curly hair like an angry poodle. His name badge flashed. It said, Pamplemousse. I wonder what that means. As he struggled to unsheath the sword at his hip, his opponent finished the canapé he was chewing and ambled away. Brigand! Cad! Fleur de mal! We shall settle this with arm wrestling, Pamplemousse called after him. Vile cur! Chien andalou! Rock, paper, scissors to the death! Shenanigan picked up his glove and handed it back to him. Up close, Shenanigan could see that he had a waxed, curled mustache, and as well as a frock coat, he wore a ruffled shirt and tights. He also was armed to the teeth. A long, thin sword was buckled on one hip, a pistol on the other, and he bristled all over with daggers. I like your clothes, said Shenanigan. They were very fashionable a few 100 years ago. I read that people back then shaved their eyebrows and glued strips of mouse fur in their place, and that all their face powder contained lead and it poisoned them. The man blinked. Comment t'appelles tu petite? Grandma doesn't speak French, so I don't think I said that right. Is that French? I only speak a bit of Spanish, said Shenanigan. I was asking your name. I am Pamplemousse de Pastiche Martinet, he said, bowing so low his hair brushed against the floor. Commentant, raconteur, émigré. Shenanigan, Humdinger, travesty, sloop. She began to understand why everyone needed name badges. It probably saved time on introductions. What did that man do to make you angry? And why do you have so many weapons? They are not weapons. They are what you call rhetorical devices. I use them to make people listen to me. And that man, Pamplemousse's face darkened, took the last mini quiche. We shall have words. That's what they were, mini quiches. Fuming, he stalked off into the crowd, calling loudly for trial by backgammon. No one paid him any notice. Shenanigan decided she'd better pick her own name badge. There were a few people at the table. A pretty woman in a flowery dress was signing her name into the ledger with painstaking, tidy cursive. An engagement ring with a stone the size of a robin's egg made it hard for her to hold the pen. Beside her, Irf was staring intently at their own gold name badge. The name on the badge was not Irf. Inheritance handed Shenanigan her badge and shoved a leaflet into her hand. There's the timetable, and Miss DeMille, here's yours. You and your dear fiancé shall be in the choral bedroom, which I do hope, She glanced at the ring. Will be up to your standards. Shenanigan remembered to sign. Oh, Shenanigan, remember to sign in and don't lose your name badge. She paused in her harried speech to frown at Earth. Aren't you going to put on yours, dear? In a minute, Gran, said Earth. The fact that Aunt Inheritance had a grandchild threw Shenanigan a little. She had thought of Inheritance as more of a mushroom than a person. She just sort of happened if conditions were right. But now she felt silly. Of course she had parents and siblings and children. They all had to be related to each other somehow. What's that on your arm? Earth hurriedly rolled their sleeve down, but Aunt Inheritance was too quick and pulled up the cuff of their jumper. She looked worried rather than angry. Have you been drawing on yourself again? Really, dear, you're going to give yourself ink poisoning. Actually, you look a bit peaky. Have you eaten? Or have you eaten something that disagreed with you? Maybe you should stay with me for a while so I can keep an eye. Oh, look, said Shenanigan cheerfully. Someone's drawn a rude picture on the dictionary case. Aunt Inheritance dropped Earth's arm and with a noise like a strangled crow went herring off after the imaginary vandal. As soon as she was out of sight, Earth shoved their badge in their pocket. Thanks, they said. Why don't you want to wear your name badge? Earth looked wearily at Shenanigan as if they were expecting an argument. Because Gran calls me by my dictionary name, but I'd rather be Earth. Is Earth like a nickname? Not really. It's just my name. I picked it. Oh. Shenanigan hadn't really known you were allowed to do that. I also wanted to ask if you were a boy or a girl earlier, but I wasn't sure if it was a rude question. Is it a rude question? I've never met anyone new before, so I'm not really sure how to do it. It's okay. Meeting a new person is hard on me, too. And I'm not a boy or a girl. Shenanigan hadn't known you were allowed to do that either. Well, then, hi, Earth. We're cousins, she grinned. I'm sorry Inheritance smudged your lizard. It was really good. I'm going to get tattoos when I'm older, like Cook. We could go get them together if you want, and then Inheritance wouldn't be able to rub them off. Earth laughed. Gran's all right, really, just overprotective. Hey, did you know that when trapped, some lizards can detach their own tails to escape? They grow back later. I think she's amazing. I think that's amazing. If you want to escape, head towards the very top of the house. My sister is in her lab with her earmuffs on. Don't scare her, though. She might be holding acid. Neat, said Earth with a grin, and finally held out their hand. Shenanigan shook it firmly. Then she kicked out towards the buffet. For the first time in history, Shenanigan wasn't actually hungry. She was thirsty, but there were chewed-up coffee beans floating in the fruit punch. Everyone else was drinking champagne, and since there was no one around to tell her not to do so, Shenanigan took a sip. It tasted awful and left an odd, sour ghost of itself in her mouth. Luckily, Flora was off to one side, adjusting her name badge. Can I have one of your mints? Shenanigan asked. Flora looked at her quizzically. Excuse me? The mints you have for coffee breath. Can I have one, please? I don't drink coffee, Flora said, sounding mildly concerned. And you shouldn't either. There's a lot of caffeine in coffee, and you're very small. Some people shouldn't really have caffeine. Or small people shouldn't. She gasped and plucked at the still full flute of champagne and took it out of Shenanigan's hands. And drinking, too, at your age, when your liver is only the size of a tennis ball? The woman, with what looked like an entire stuffed pelican on her hat, waved frantically at Flora, and Flora winced apologetically. You stay there. I'll be just a second, she said to Shenanigan, and darted away. Shenanigan really did try to wait for Flora, but as at any party, the area with food was an area of high traffic, and she soon buffeted away from the buffet and was swallowed up by the churning sea of people once again, dodging legs and dropping food. At one point, she was carried past Felicity, who was smiling rigidly at an older woman as they offered condolences on her mundane name. Poor thing, it's not your fault, is it? Some people just born unlucky, I suppose. And in an attempt to reach her, Shenanigan inadvertently crashed into someone else. There were some people in the world that have made unpleasantness a hobby, and they practice it every day the way other people practice playing the trumpet or picking locks. Shenanigan had collided with such a person, and she knew it straight away. Her name badge said atrocious, and she had a figure like a newel post at the bottom of the stairs, curved and shining as if she had been polished into existence. No one else was anywhere near as dressed up, and Shenanigan instinctively backed away from her clothes, clean and pressed and expensive enough to bite. She was arm in arm with a repulsively handsome man, sporting a thin mustache and a sharp suit. His name said Pique, or Peak. They had the same cruel smile. Peak, my dearest, what is this? The woman said softly. Atrocious, my darling heart. I'm no expert, but it appears to be a small, grubby child. Do we know her? We don't travel in such circles, Sister Mind. There was a deliberate boredom in them as they sipped their champagne. Well, who are you? Introductions, said Peak. I'm Shenanigan, said Shenanigan. Swift, she added. Obviously, said Peak. Can you sing? Asked Atrocious. No, said Shenanigan. Can you dance? Asked Peak. No. Can you play instruments? Asked Atrocious. Not well. And you clearly lack the wit for sparkling conversation. What exactly are you good at? Sneered Peak. Smuggling spiders in my sleeves, said Shenanigan sweetly. I can show you if you like. Peak took a step back, nose wrinkling, but Atrocious leaned forward. That might work on someone like Inheritance, she said in her low and deadly voice. But you should see what I'm smuggling in my sleeves. Shenanigan wanted to stick her tongue out and run off, but their eyes were fishhooks digging into her. She felt she couldn't leave without their permission, and they were enjoying her discomfort too much to let her go. She was going to be stuck here forever, and with the two of them watching her flounder and twitch like the catch of the day. A hand clamped tightly to her shoulder. Atrocious! You're lovely to see you. So sorry to hear about your fifth husband, said Flora. Her almost genuine smile was still in place. And Peak, your third. A heart attack at his age. You two do seem to have the worst luck in love. I'm afraid your information is out of date, Cousin Flora. We have both since remarried. Peak smirked over the rim of his champagne glass. Though I do notice you're here alone this year. Flora's smile didn't slip. She and Peak stared at each other for a long, tense moment. Her nails were digging into Shenanigan's shoulder. Finally, Atrocious rolled her eyes. Peak, sweetheart, shall we go find someone a little more interesting? You do have the best instincts, Atrocious, my dear. Shenanigan watched them go, making a mental note of where they were headed so she could be sure to walk in the opposite direction. What did I tell you? Said Flora. Beasts. They're awful. They're horrible. They're rich, disgustingly rich, with enough ex-husbands between them to crew a small yacht. You should see them in their element, swanning about with their wealthy and spoiled, pretending to like them. They leave a bad taste in my mouth. Me too. Can I have a mint? She prompted. Of course, said Flora distantly, dropping one into her hand. I think I see Jilt coming this way. I'm off. But a split second after Flora vanished from Shenanigan's right elbow, she appeared at her left like a magic trick. There you are, she said. Ta-da! She held out a packet of chewing gum. Not a mint, but close enough. And chewing gum is supposed to help you give up caffeine, I think. Just be sure not to swallow it. Shenanigan looked back and forth between her elbows until she was dizzy with confusion. How did you... But you were just... I don't like coffee, she said finally, finished lamely. Flora laughed. I know. Shenanigan looked at the name tag pinned to the woman's dress. She could just make out an F, but the rest was hidden by her cardigan. You're teasing me, she said. You're not Flora, are you? Not. Flora shook Shenanigan's hand in hers and bent down to look right into her eyes. Nope, but I'm delighted to meet you, Shenanigan Swift. I'm Fauna. She smiled brightly. We'll have a chance to talk again, but right now someone is trying to get your attention. Shenanigan turned and saw a huge hand waving. Uncle Maelstrom! Hold on, Skipper. A crack echoed around the hall, and Shenanigan learned what it sounds like when a great many heads swivel around at once, which is similar to a cat skidding off on a roll of taffeta. Aunt Schadenfreude stood beside the dictionary, her walking stick in hand. The crack had been the sound of it striking the banister. She did not have to speak. At one, the crowd of relatives arranged themselves around her in a rough semicircle. Uncle Maelstrom scooped Shenanigan up one-handed and set her on his shoulders. She tangled her fingers in his hair and looked around at her family. A collective term is a special name given to a group of animals, like a herd of cows. Many animals have their own strange terms. She knew the collective term for starlings was a murmuration, and the collective term for owls was a parliament, and then it was a murder of crows, a gulp of swallows. What was the collective term for swifts, she wondered? A quarrel, maybe? Earth might know. They seem to know a lot about animals. Is this Shenanigan here on her uncle's shoulders? Shenanigan thought she could see a flash of Atrocious's shining dress somewhere in the throng and a stray flounce of Pamplemouse's frock coat. She spotted Flora over to the left of her aunt and raised a hand to wave, but then she saw Fauna, or was that Flora, settled beside the first, so they were standing shoulder to shoulder. Looking at them made Shenanigan feel dizzy. They were identical twins, but really identical. The same height, the same weight. They had the same haircut. They wore the same clothes. One of the twins spotted a slight rip in the sleeve of the other's cardigan and reached down to tear a hole in her own to match. They linked arms. The steady waves of talk that had filled the high arches of the hall rolled back. The house was quiet once again, but for the faint humming sound that comes from many people standing together, waiting. Good, said Aunt Schadenfreude. Most people seem to be here, and if they are late, then tough. I could die any minute. It's time to begin. Let's finish there. That's the end of that chapter. So when we come back, we'll do chapter 8. Until we read again, my love, I'm going to look up pamplemousse and find out what it means. Mwah! Love you.